Hi guys, this is my first video back after the new year, so I hope you all had a great holiday season and Happy New Year to you all. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cover really quickly some of the shorter term stuff and then into more of the big stuff, I guess in the general direction. And the reason that I'm covering the short term stuff is that we've just launched a short term channel within our Discord group, which actually comes with an indicator as part of the subscription. And I'll just kind of build this out through as to why and what we're looking for. So let's go back a couple of days. So I was basically looking at this green box, right? Now on the green box, I'm just going to put this onto my screen. On this green box, it was actually built up of a couple of key levels on the smaller time frame. Just give it this a second. So in essence, we were looking for the move away from this and then back into the green box. So as you can see, the first move was this one. We've come back now. You can see the strength of the green box. Now this is something I would regard as an auction area. So the longs and shorts of it is that this has actually acted like a magnet. This is going back just to show. This is going back a couple of days, the 28th, 29th. We were looking for the 45.5 area. And as you can see, we had a daily close in the green box. We then moved on up away from the green box and then back on down. So we've had this discussion in the short-term channel. We've actually had some of our members fill this position and then ultimately take this long. So as you can see, we were looking for why this was coming back to the area. And again, using the indicator, if I zoom in on this, using the indicator, I was actually looking for yesterday a 47, I think it was a 47.6 is what I was actually calling for yesterday before the move up. So you can see I was looking 47.2 to 47.7 with a view of similar thing in the box, and then basically coming on back down from that move there. So I said a range 47.6 to 48 ideally, that would have been the sweet spot, and we actually ended up getting obviously the 47, I think it was 47.5 before actually dropping back down again to the 45.5 level you can actually see there. So yeah, pretty cool overall. So I guess in short term, I'm going to be using the indicator a little bit more in terms of the channel. I'm personally not really trading the ins and outs of the short term stuff. I'm again still holding larger term trades. That's really what kind of works for me personally. But there's nothing stopping you, obviously, if you sign up to the subscription for the short term channel. You actually get this indicator for life as well as part of the offering. So in essence, what we're looking for right now is just the kind of key areas. So this is basically a traffic light system. If you're already using this, you're already a subscriber. Now we've basically got a traffic light system. We've got a red zone there, which signifies kind of high volume. You've got green and grey, which is basically, I suppose, dull volume. There's not really much there. It's kind of lacking any form of interest, really. But you can expect those to, potentially tag and drop back off, given that there's no real buyers or sellers kind of active around these areas. And then we've got an orange line there. Let's put this in. Then we've got an orange line there, which is actually kind of middle of the road from the green to the red. So I'm just going to put that in there. I'll put that in orange as well. So what we can see, I'm going to copy this one. We've got another orange down below. So what we can see is that we'd be looking to bounce off this there. Expectations would be down first of all to the green, but as the green's quite low, I'd expect another bounce. Put an arrow in this. I expect another bounce down there before ultimately taking back off again, and ideally, at least to this as a target, potentially higher. Okay, so pretty simple, pretty straightforward. That's kind of short-term stuff covered. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing at the moment. I'll just hide these in the drawings so that they're there for later. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out then a little bit further into the larger term stuff. Okay, so on the larger term time frame, let's start off on a weekly, right? That's decent enough. We're going to start off on a weekly. Now, one thing that I've seen a million times in the last couple of weeks, especially over the Christmas period. Everybody's still trying to catch a bottom. We've spoke about wicks being filled. I think what I want to do is just go over maybe a little bit of logic as to why we are where we are, what I think we can kind of see next, right? So you got to go back all the way to March last year when I was calling the rocket call and the roadmap as to why. Now, if you assume that we could actually forecast the drop coming as early as March, okay? Now, if you go back into my posts, I've covered this a couple of times again. If you go back into my posts, especially this one, I'll put a link in the description below. Actually, I think you can do this in the little top button, so I'll try to put this up the top as well. So, in essence, what I was looking at here is going back now over a year, looking at this in December 2020. Now, this just covers all the logic kind of step by step as to why we were doing what we were doing, right? So it's a very comprehensive post as a whole. It's a link below anyway. And I guess if you could see where we were in February, I was writing the roadmap in March in terms of putting out to the general public. And then we've actually gone and done, no different to what was expected along this period, right? So you can see, let's use another post. You can see, actually, back into the roadmap. Let's come all the way down. This one here. You can see going back the 26th of March, right? There was reason as to why we were going to be coming down into this region, okay? And that was already written, way before, like I said, December, this one, December 2020, right? So I guess the general idea is that understanding the bias as to where we are on the roadmap will give you some idea of where we want to go next and why the price is moving where it wants to go next. Now, forget what I'm looking at, right? Just think of this as a newbie type trader, and we can see now that we've got this top, and we're going to come on down to this level being the low, okay? Now, you can clearly see we've got 10 bars there. In theory, it's actually 70 days plus in terms of a move, right? Now, in Elliott wave terms, I was looking at this being the weekly, right? Because we actually had the 0-1 in there. We come down, obviously, for the 2. So, in theory, we'd be starting something like this. 3, 4, and a 5, okay? Now, if we can see that this was actually a 3, and this was actually a 4, what I would regard as a weekly time frame. We've had 70 days, so 2 months more or less, right? Now, as I just explained, with someone with a bit of experience, you could see this happening before that move was called, and the logic then comes into Wyckoff and a few other bits and pieces as to why exactly it's doing what it's doing inside this schematic. Okay, now I'm just going to go with the smallest time frame possible. You'd have to look at middle of April all the way through to June, right? So you got April, you got May, you got June. It's 3 months to make this move 3 to 4 on a weekly time frame. Okay. Now, what happens then is if you haven't been following us and you haven't seen my videos or Paul's videos, this 5 actually becomes a monthly 3, right? So a much, much bigger 3. Now, what happens then is you'd expect an A, a B, and a C within that move at the bare minimum. Okay, now you might get combo moves which could look something like this, and obviously this could be drawn out an awful long time. Okay, now if we assume that this is the monthly 3 and we've actually had a weekly 3 that lasted bare minimum 2 to 3 months, we'd be looking at least 2 to 3 months on these moves, again minimum. Okay, however, if you think of just layman terms logic, you're looking at a monthly move, which could in essence be 4 times the amount of time of the weekly move, right? I'm not saying that's exactly what's going to happen, but you can't rule it out, okay? So if you're just looking at this in simple terms and as kind of dumbed down as we can actually make this, we have a monthly 3 at the weekly 5, okay? And then we'd expect an A, a B, and a C. Now, if you think of where we are currently, and we go back again to kind of newbie types time frame, I'm not going to go into any of the schematics on the Wyckoff side, but ultimately, if you look at that time frame there, we've started this down move on the 8th of November. Okay, so let's assume that we finish the A move by the middle of January, by the end of January. We would then expect a move back up that might last another 2 months. And then we'd expect another move down, which could last another 2 months. So we could be looking at, let's just say the end of January, we've got February, March. Let's just be realistic. And then we've got, from March, we've got April and May. Even if we said mid-June, okay? Now, that's very, very plausible. I'm not saying that's exactly the time frame, because that's, just estimating based on the previous moves and assuming that we've had a 3-4 weekly, which ultimately covers then where we are on a monthly, okay? So that for me is, again, where we kind of sat right now. We've just covered the short-term stuff. We're looking now at the bigger picture. Okay, now, I've covered a lot of this kind of info, and I know some of this is what we teach within Discord, but I've actually covered over the year, this particular post again, I've actually covered, exactly where we are, why we are where we are. I've gone through this in individual steps as to why we move and where we move, and as you can see, kind of calling in the top from there, calling the bottoms from here. You can see the moves and why it's done what it's done. The rocket call, the roadmap, it was already mapped out as to why we were doing what we were doing. That roadmap I called earlier, look, the 3 into the channel, up we go. It was already mapped out, right? It's all in this post. We saw a price explore newfound territory. So this particular post, this goes 30th of September, and actually drawn this level here, which was at a price that Bitcoin hadn't been before. Right now, this just shows me how institutionalized Bitcoin's becoming. Fast forward the 10th of November, and what do? Go up and tag it practically to the pip. All right, so for me, I can see where we're going. I can look at this roadmap and say I have my bias, and that's basically what I'm looking for next. Okay, now let's take this a couple of steps further. Let's get out of this, and I'm going to use another piece of software called Advanced Get. Now, in Advanced Get terms, they practically saying the same thing, right? We've had the weekly there and a weekly 5 there, right? So weekly 3, weekly 5. Okay, now bigger picture, we could argue that that's just a double top of sorts, right? So we're now seeing some kind of double top. We've come down and we've had our weekly 4, and inside this you'll see a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5, which means we're now coming down for a move. Now this could easily be the A, back up B, and down for C. And as I said just before Christmas, it could just be a double bottom at the 4. That's very plausible, and you start to create this range as a whole. This might give us some kind of spring effect, again in Wyckoff terms, before actually moving on up. Okay. Now, when I first looked at this, I thought to myself, why? What's this going to be doing? Now, if you put yourself in the shoes of Composite Man, what we're actually doing is creating maximum type of pain for retail type traders, right? How many of these, fake gurus actually had Lambos for Christmas, right? I mean, anybody that was saying, I've bought a new car, I've done this, I've done that, clearly wasn't on their Bitcoin calls. It was probably based off YouTube video views rather than actually trading this, right? Now, everybody was buying the dip, and the dip is still going on. So, clearly not many of these guys were making money, right? Now, if we come back into the logic on this particular move, we can see that we've got an oversold situation on the stochastic, which does lend itself for a move up B, which I covered just now. But ultimately, what I'd be expecting is this to come back up. We then go into that overbought territory and then back down for a C again. All right? because that's what you'd expect. ABC, bare minimum, right? Now, let me get rid of these. If we look at the actual forecasted moves, right, we could look at how accurate these are. And this is, again, part of the reason, put the magnet on, part of the reason I think this is very, very institutionalized. We're going to go 0 to A back to B, and we can see clear as day a 1618 all the way through. Let me just turn it up a little bit brighter. Okay, so we can see clear as day a 1618 from that move. Now, if we go to the next moves up, we want to be looking at, how accurate are these levels going to be? How sustainable are these levels going to be? And what we can see, we had a nice rejection from the 2618 there. Now, in Forex and other kind of commodities, you're more likely to see a 1618. But given the hype, especially the retail, terms like diamond hands and buy the dip, I think for me overall, a 2618 is possibly the new norm when it comes to crypto trading as a whole. But I think the fact that it's actually still the 618 levels just shows the levels of respect that they have even at that point. Now again, clear as day, we can see a 4618 there. So if you just double up on what you'd expect, you'd see the 2618 instead of the 618 or 1618, and then ultimately the 2, right? So for me, the 2 to the 4, and then the 1 becomes a 2 in essence. But then you'd expect, quite a decent retracement from that move. So again, we're just going to cover this being the 3 on the weekly, the 4 on the weekly, the 5 on the weekly, and the 5 on the weekly equals a monthly 3. Okay, so we now have a monthly 3, and we're coming down for a monthly 4 in this move. I think the misconception is that if this is a bear market, it could go really deep. It could be this, it could be that. Now, I've said from day one, we could get some kind of evil wick. There's liquidity around the 19K level, but there's also the invalidation at 19K. So we could see something 23. I know there's numbers around 23, 24 as a whole. So we could see that. Now, the other thing we might see is just a pop back down underneath the 28 and then go back up, because if too many people start to expect the 23, it won't collect the 23 liquidity at this particular move. Okay, so again, where we are right now, I kind of feel that it's doing what it should be doing. It's no different to what we were drafting out back last December, and not just the December just gone, covering over a year ago. If we step out to the monthly time frame, what we can actually see right now is we've got room to carry on down. We've got a downward trend in this. This is the orange, the yellow level. So we've got room to carry on down. Now, if we assume a double top situation on the monthly, we've actually had, like I said, the 3, the 4, the 5 giving us the overall 3. And therefore, that 3 situation, you'd expect an ABC. At the moment, we haven't potentially finished a full-on A move as of yet. So we could be seeing, like I said, a couple of months before we actually get into anything, meaty, before I expect new all-time highs to be created. And the fact that retail are screaming, has this finished yet? Is this the bottom? Is this the bottom? Every little move down, every $100 is a new bottom. And I think the problem being is right now, we've got a wick to fill. It's only a small one. We've got a wick to fill there. We've got liquidity down a little bit lower. Now we've actually gone beyond the weekly 5. We can actually look at this being almost no problem. You're not going to get any form of invalidation until down below this level here. Okay, so it's without the magnet tool. So you're not going to get any invalidation. So we got all of this space that we could actually still play with. Let's put this on to the price range. We've got all of this space that we could actually still play with. Okay, so it's nearly a 60% drop potentially that we could actually take, and it wouldn't invalidate this particular account, right? Now, if you just look at Elliott wave, a purely Elliott wave, we'd be looking at, like I said, ABC bare minimum. If you look at the monthly time frame compared to the weekly time frame, you could be looking at 6 months, easy, comfortably 6 months in terms of a move like this. this is actually going to cause max pain as a whole, and therefore there's no reason or logic that we actually need to, you know, finish with this anytime soon. Okay. Now, just to finish with, I've also covered a lot of this in terms of free education, right? Now, what we're obviously teaching within the Discord is a little bit more than this. We've actually got a little bit more depth how you put all this together. But in essence, whether you're a new trader or whether you've been trading a long time, this particular post, and again, I'll link this one down below, this covers everything from the psychology into why people actually get into things like crypto, how to assess an altcoin. We've got uptrends, you know, downtrends. We've got moving averages. We've got things like the MACD, and a lot of people, you know, use the MACD and that type of indicator. Buying the dips, you know, how we simplify that. We've got a bit of a discussion about top traders and some of the techniques that we actually use. Um, and again, just, you know, covering every aspect from Elliott Wave, Wyckoff, Fibonacci. There's a lot of stuff in this particular post, as you can see. So I've covered this, you know, just before Christmas. This was almost a Christmas present out to the audience. But yeah, I'll link this down below. So, you know, I hope this one, although it's long-winded, I hope this kind of sets up the new year, you know, to be another good one. And you know, you can see now from the roadmap to where we are, why we going, where we going. And then what I'll be doing is I'll be kind of drilling down in the next couple of videos in a bit more depth. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you soon.